The first thing that comes to mind for me is I want to date somebody growth minded. An emotion takes 90 seconds to run its course in your body. Anger, frustration, sadness, fear, right? 90 seconds for the actual emotion to run its course. This intellectualizing of, well, I know my attachment style and I've analyzed everything about the other person. But what you've done is you've completely self-abandoned. A lot of people use narcissism to just describe somebody selfish. And it's like, no. Narcissism is a personality disorder. When you come back into your window of tolerance, that's typically where we can experience joy, laughter, security, safety. And then when you go below, right, we see those peaks and valleys. That's when we're constantly vacillating between the different nervous system states. What does a serious relationship look like and mean to you?
On the show today, relationship coach and podcast host Sabrina Zohar. She's got a massive following, says all sorts of interesting things about dating. So why don't we dive in there? So Sabrina, if you first of all, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. I'm super excited to be here.
If you had to date one kind of person for the rest of your life, let's say, partner has horrible hang gliding accent or something like that, and you have to date one kind of person, who would it be? Would it be people who've done therapy, people who haven't done therapy, people who meditate, Italians? What are you going to go for?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is I want to date somebody growth minded, because all of those aspects and variables will only culminate if somebody is growth minded, because I can't tell you how many people could be in therapy, could be coaching, could be doing all this work. But if they're not actually truly investing in themselves, if they don't really see where patterns come from, how that's impacting their adult relationships, regulating their nervous system, reacting versus responding, if they're not in a growth minded space, it's going to be really difficult to have any kind of relationship, despite where they come from, who they are, and what their background is.
Yeah. So how do I know if someone's growth minded? So I've had partners that, for example, wouldn't want to learn new things. I said, let's do a dance class or let's try this. And eventually I got this sense of like, I don't think this person's really growing with me on the journey here. And that's going to be boring in the long run. And if we bump into problems, how on earth are we going to get out of those problems? So what are some of the sort of red flags and green flags for growth minded or not?
When it comes to growth minded, for me, what I like to see is a couple of things. One, how do they handle feedback? How do they take any kind of criticism or thoughts of, hey, this really hurt me? Do they go right into being defensive? Do they try to defend themselves or give you excuses? Do they try to use their past as an excuse versus an explanation? Kind of the first thing I like to look at. One thing my partner asked me when we first met was, what is something you've changed around about recently and what prompted the change? Because he wanted to see as well, how open to other perspectives am I? Am I black and white thinking where it's, nope, it's good or bad, it's yes or no? Or am I able to understand nuance and say, okay, well, maybe my partner had a different experience than I did. Can I get curious and learn about them, right? When my partner and I have had issues, the first thing he says is, maybe we should talk to somebody. Should we see a therapist? What is it how can I support you better? What is it that you need from me? And so I think curiosity is really important to look out for. And if we're looking for yays or nays, like I said, we want to look and see, do they take accountability? Do they take ownership? Do they reflect? Do they have a reflective personality? Is it their character that is super avoidant, not just avoidant attachment style, but truly a personality defect, right? Like narcissism personality, right? Avoidant personality disorder, things like that, sociopathy, right? Those are aspects of character you're not going to change.
Hang on. Let's slow this down a little bit. So, for a lot of listeners, it's really good stuff. I want to come back to narcissism. That's such a hot topic right now. Let's start with the basics then. So my girlfriend wants to give me feedback. She says, hey, Mark, you were terrible in bed yesterday all night. Let's something less extreme than that. You weren't very attentive to me over dinner last night. Okay. And my immediate response is, somatically, I get, the blood comes up my heart and I start going, yeah, but actually I wasn't, I get defensive. I take a breath. What's a better response than that?
Totally. I think it's a really valid question. Honestly, what I usually do, like a response would be like, what's really important is we want to understand the pause. If somebody is coming to you, so like my partner and I, for instance, we have a saying, to avoid resentment, can I share something with you? We both know when that word is said, phones are down, stare them in the eyes, like, okay, what's coming up? Like, what do you want to share with me? Asking for consent is really important. That way, your body can be ready of, okay, what's going on? The second aspect here is when your partner comes, like there's a difference between you never do this, you always ignore me, right? You're such a fucking asshole. there's a way to, first of all, your partner to talk to you, right? So if I'm going to talk to my partner, I'm going to use I statements. I wanted to share something with you. When you said this, I felt really dismissed. I didn't feel like I was a priority to you. And so if I'm saying that to my partner, what I'm hoping I'll get back is a pause and that's really valid. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. While this might be really hard for me to hear, I know that you're just being honest with me and that this is something that is on your mind. What do you need from me to feel more supported? What do you need from me that I haven't been showing up for you in? And how can I either take accountability, take responsibility, or show you that my intention and my actions did not align? And I apologize for that. For a lot of us, at least for me personally, when we're coming with conflict, the repair is the most important. It's not about the issue, it's about how we can rectify it. And if I'm going to come to my partner and say something that bothers me more than anything, I just want to be validated that I'm not crazy, I'm not too emotional, I'm not too sensitive. Ugh, you're being dramatic again.
Okay. What does validated mean? It's one of these kind of American words I hear. Imagine I'm like a dumb dude from a redneck state, because I kind of am. I'm kind of like a British redneck. Okay, so like if I have a partner who says, "Oh my god, like I totally need to be validated," like, and I don't know what that means. Like, explain it in man terms for me.
In man terms, essentially, it's just acknowledging that this person's feelings are real. Right. So,
Okay.
like, if somebody comes and says, yeah, like, hey, Mark, that was really fucked up what you said to me, validating would be, I apologize if what I said was hurtful. That was never my intent. Right. It's just acknowledging that they had a lived experience that might not be yours, but oftentimes we go into discredit. No, I didn't say that. What are you talking about? God, you're always making a fucking issue. You're so dramatic. Here we go. Another thing I did wrong. That deflects that. And then the other person's going to get defensive saying, but why are you saying, pretty much, why are you discrediting what I'm saying? That's the validation.
The key thing, though, is that their feeling is valid, but their facts might not be, though, right? It's like, I actually didn't sleep with all three of your sisters. It was only two of them. I definitely didn't sleep with Susan. Like the facts can be valid, but the feeling of anger is valid, right? So we've got to separate these two things out. And you also mentioned sort of always and never. My experience is those kind of words end really badly. As soon as I say you always or you never, and if I hear them from someone else, I'm kind of like, okay, this is tricky.
Because and rightfully so, right? Because especially if a lot of us have that rejection, that that wound that goes deep. When I hear you always, you never, instantly you're like, oh, so I don't do anything right. And you just shut down. You're not going to be able to receive. And to your point, part of this healing journey and going through all this, which I love to share, is like, it's not about, oh, I'm just never going to feel anxious or I'm never going to feel these emotions. No, I will. I'm just going to know how to handle them. I'm going to have the bandwidth in order to handle them. And part of this two conflicting thoughts is, like you said, Mark, I could say, hey, your anger is totally valid. It's not factual. It's not based in facts, right? Like, I didn't not text you because I don't like you. I didn't text you because I was on a flight and I didn't have the Wi-Fi, or right, whatever.
Sure.
But your feelings could be valid and I will never discredit that. But I'm going to say, what are the facts to back it up? And oftentimes that's the work that I like to do with folks. It's not about coming to your partner and being irate and having them reassure you. It's also about sitting with ourselves to say, wait a minute, what facts do I have to back up that my partner didn't call me tonight? It's because he's cheating on me, right? Like, that is me filling in the blanks with worst case scenarios, assumptions, catastrophizing, without actually having anything to back it up. If I have it to back up, then I'm going to come to you and say, here are the facts. Let's talk about it.
Okay, what's the body part here? So often when I have relationship coaches on, we've had a few over the years, some really good ones, and often they've sort of studied, they've got a system, you should say this, you should say that. But my experience is when I'm in the heat of the moment, I forget all that good stuff that I should say. Like, Sabrina told me to do that. And I've totally forgotten because my body's just sort of hijacked me emotionally. And I'm in that fight or flight response. So what's the body part here?
Oh, the body part is so important, right? There's the book, The Body Keeps the Score, because it's very true, right? And I think a lot of the times we hear people say, I want to feel better, but they're not feeling. If you intellectualize and you just stay in your head and everything is, well, but I'm going to logically know that what you said was hurtful. But if I don't actually understand what's happening in my body, like, where do I feel those sensations? Is it in my chest? Is it in my shoulders? What are those sensations trying to tell me? Maybe it's to run. Maybe it's that I don't feel safe. Maybe it's whatever. And so oftentimes what I recommend is, I don't want anyone to have a script when they're going to talk to their partner. I want them to understand using using I statements. That's the only thing I would say, please don't forget. Above that, what's a really beautiful practice is to stop for a second and say, you know what? I need to go to the bathroom and remove myself for a minute. I'm not feeling present in the moment. Because it actually, Jill Bolt Taylor, she's a doctor, and she came out and said, or she's a neuroscientist, excuse me. And she said, an emotion takes 90 seconds to run its course in your body. Anger, frustration, sadness, fear, right? 90 seconds for the actual emotion to run its course. Our mental state keeps the emotion alive thereafter. So if my partner says something that's really hurtful, triggering, I start to feel that wave of heat over my body. I start to feel my eyes are darting. Like, I know what dysregulation feels like for me because I am very clear between safety in my body and not, and have worked through that for years. So if I notice that my partner says something, I feel dysregulated, the first thing I'm going to do is maybe put my hand over my heart, take a couple of breaths, and ask my partner for the space that I need because I'm not seeing things clearly. And sometimes it could be just going for a walk around your house, going around the block and coming back in, scanning for safety in your room, and just reacclimating yourself back to the present moment. Because what you're describing, and beautifully, is that dysregulation shuts your prefrontal cortex off. And when that logic center goes off and you go back into the amygdala, which is that fear center, you're not actually seeing things clearly. You're seeing them through a lens. And that then we then project and we assume and we start to fill in those blanks without giving our partner the option, the possibility to maybe explain that what they said wasn't how my father used to say it. They just said no because they weren't in the mood to do something, not because they hate me.
Mm-hmm. So sort of gone back to childhood there. What is this? In short, what is the connection between how we're raised and how we relate intimately later on? You know, I've seen fun examples of this, like my friend Claire, I'll call her that because that's her real name. She only dates boys with beards. And I know for a fact her dad has a beard, right? Like there's some sort of little fun ones like that. And then some maybe sort of more emotionally, therapeutically significant ones about attachment styles. If someone were to say to you, how does my relationship to in my childhood, to my parents impact how I do intimacy now? What's the short version of that?
Short version is, who taught you that? Right? Who taught you these patterns? Who taught you that emotionally unavailable partners are love? Who taught you that it's safe to be with somebody who puts you down or discredits you? Who taught you that you're not worthy and deserving of love? Because I personally, I'm not a fan of, like, I'm not blaming anybody's parents. This isn't about like, oh, we have to say your parents were the worst person. I love my mother to the moon and back, but I also know that my mother used to disassociate when we were kids. And so I never really felt seen, heard, or understood. I had a father who was a textbook narcissist, classic T, all of it. And so I learned I'm too much, I'm too needy, because he would shut down when any of us had emotions. So what did that look like in my adult relationships? I kept dating men with very little emotional bandwidth. I constantly felt I'm too much because that's what I genuinely believed about myself, because that was the pattern that I was taught as a child. When I had an emotion, a parent shut down, I lost connection, which meant come out more, right? That was my coping mechanism. My siblings was to retreat. My sister shuts down, just sits and just goes completely into freeze. So what we want to look at is, who taught you that? And where is this pattern learned from? That's the quickest nutshell about your childhood dynamics to your adult relationships.
That's fantastically clear. Thank you. I like that. So what I notice is we're in what I'd call a therapeutic culture. I mean, more in the United States than Europe, but it's increasingly spread to Europe. Everyone's obsessed with analyzing their past. You know, they know who taught them what. They're a little bit sort of narcissistically, and we'll come to sort of full-blown clinical narcissism, but just sort of culturally narcissistically obsessed with, you know, oh my God, this is this, and it was because of my dad and because of my issues, and it becomes kind of an excuse, and it also becomes sort of an endless game of infinite personal growth work. And I don't necessarily see the people playing that game have like better marriages. So what's your thought on this sort of infinite therapeutic culture?
I think you're making a really great point. And I think a lot of it is, excuse me, is intellectualizing versus implementing. Because I think we have to remember, like when I talked to my mom like a year ago about this, and she said, you know, Sabrina, you have to remember, when I was your age, what did we have? We didn't have the internet. She said, no one used the term narcissist. Nobody used the term, any of this terminology. What did they have? Why isn't your husband happy? Good Housekeeping magazines. How to make your husband happy. Do this to make your husband feel better.
Those are pretty good. I read one the other day and it's fantastic. Like, I have to say, like, my girlfriend does half of that and it is good advice. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. But there was for a long time, there was never really an acknowledgement of patterns, core beliefs, and things like that. And now what I feel like is the pendulum has swung to the other side. Now everybody is a therapist, everybody's a doctor, everybody can diagnose. The amount of people that will message me, my avoidant, and it's like they're not a fucking Tamagotchi. They're not a toy that you could put in your pocket. This is a human being with a lived experience going through things. And I think a lot of people are taking terminology completely out of hand. They watch a video and say, I know it. This is what everybody does. They're projecting their experiences onto everybody else without taking accountability. If I hear, especially when we talk about that avoidant anxious dynamic, those core beliefs and
So just for
styles.
listeners, yeah, like you might need to back
Of
up
course,
just a little bit on the
totally.
attachment stuff.
Absolutely. So we have, if anybody is familiar with attachment theory, you can just listen to me babble. For anybody that's not, there's 4 major attachment styles that have been identified. I think it was in the 70s they started to realize the way you connect with your parents, and the 0 to 1 up to 0 to 6 and 7 is called egocentric age. During that time, that's how a child learns to attach to people, learns how to connect to people. So if you have, when we talk about the 4 major, they're secure, right? These are caregivers that showed you how to give and receive love. They were consistent. They were reciprocal. These are people, the caregivers that maybe validated your experience as a kid to say, hey, you know what? That's okay. I totally understand that that was really hurtful, but please know that's not about you. And I love you and I'm here for you. That doesn't mean that your parents had to do that all the time. Scientifically, they actually did a study that for a child to come out secure, you need to make eye contact with your child 30% of the time. So sometimes even simple things like that, right? Think about a mom that's screaming at the other kids, holding the kid, but no one's seeing the child. So that's somebody that's secure. Then we have the 3 insecure attachments. Of course, there's all these different amalgamations that have come out over the years, but for argument's sake, we have the avoidant, we have the anxious, we have the disorganized. The avoidant attacher learns at a very young age emotions aren't safe, maybe, right? Like my partner, his father was abusive. So he learned to have an emotion meant you were going to get hit, meant you were going to be in trouble, meant you were going to lose connection. So he learned, stuff it down, suppress it. I'm only safe internally. I don't trust anybody. My independence is everything. This isn't safe. That's his experience. Then you go to the anxious, hi, that's me, where it's constantly unpredictability, walking on eggshells, hypervigilance, staring at your caregiver's face to say, are they mad right now? What's their tone of voice? Are they going to yell? Are they going to leave? Right? There's no consistency in that love of give and receive. Then the disorganized, we see that in a lot of homes of abuse, right? Your caregiver is the person you love. So you want the love. You're coming towards them, but then maybe they hit them. So the child retreats and says, but this isn't safe. So they're constantly that push, pull, hot, cold. I love it. I'm in. And then, no, this is too much. I can't handle it. They retreat. So when we look at the attachment styles, like if we talk about what's happening in the internet right now, the avoidant is villainized, right? They're the worst people and they shut down and they don't care and we've given this fetishization to the anxious. Well, at least I express myself. It's like, no. Constantly talking doesn't mean you're necessarily communicating. And with the anxious person, they're also avoidant. They are avoiding looking at the deeper root, the cause, what's really coming up for them. Is it really the fact that your partner didn't text you, or is it the fact that you've created a narrative that they don't like you and now you want reassurance? So then we also look at the avoidant partner is also anxious. When they shut down, they have intense anxiety. They just don't know what to do with it. And so I think that's kind of what I see a lot right now in the self-help world is this intellectualizing of, well, I know my attachment style and I've analyzed everything about the other person. But what you've done is you've completely self-abandoned because you're so focused on them, but you're not focused on what's happening for you and if this even works for you.
Fantastic. First of all, thanks for your patience. I know this is basic for you, so I appreciate the recap for listeners. I also want to point listeners to the episodes we did with Connor Beaton and Adam Lane Smith on attachment, if people want more on that. So what I heard you saying there was that it's not an excuse, whether it's attachment styles or any kind of therapeutics, psychodynamic. It's like, hey, I know where this comes from, but that doesn't actually excuse my behavior. And secondly, there's this piece between intellectually knowing something and actually being able to apply knowledge so it becomes real relational wisdom. Is that a fair summary?
100%. And I think it's important, whether it be basic to some or new to others. I think this is information for us to just always be refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, my girlfriend and I were talking about this morning because I was listening to your podcast, and it's always helpful to go, oh, do you think that? And do you think that? It's always helpful. As one of the languages like trauma that I think the way I look at it is like couples have certain languages. And if they learn like the language of trauma or the language of attachment or the language of personality types, Enneagram, it gives them different lenses to help with different situations. What are the other main lenses you use? So attachment styles, are there other sort of these personality systems? Most therapists seem to have, or coaches seem to have like 4 or 5. Like, what are your main ones?
Definitely love attachment theory. If that's just, it's helpful. I love dialectic behavioral therapy, like DBT practices are really big. I love like that. I also think about what saved me, right? Like I was this person. I was the woman that was so anxious I couldn't sit still. I would text somebody nonstop. I was constantly self-sabotaging, if you want to use that word. And I was so anxious I couldn't sit still. And I learned that DBT really, really saved my life. Meditation was a huge practice for me to learn how to not just get rid of my thoughts, but to sit with them, to learn what discomfort meant. I love IFS, internal family systems, and parts work. To me, oh, I love it. Is to me one of my favorite actual modalities. And then I'm big on the neuroscience because I think a lot of us, especially in the dating world and dating and relationships specifically, like let's think about limerence, right? Being obsessed with somebody. How many times you've probably had a friend or somebody that's like, I can't get over them. I'm just stuck on them. And it's like, that's an addiction loop. That's a dopamine reward system. That is, you are putting them on a pedestal. You are creating core beliefs based around their perception of you. So for me, I really like to amalgamate and I like to combine, whether it be attachment theory, psychology, like DBT, IFS, or neuroscience, because I think they all cohesively come together, especially in the high anxiety, because I want my anxious folks to know there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken, but it's really about the mindset that we've created, the narrative and the pathways that we've created, and how can we rewire that in a way that's actually sustainable long-term and not the clickbait bullshit we see on the internet of like, if an avoidant does this, text this. It's like, that's not helping anybody.
Got it. Just for listeners, so IFS, Internal Family Systems, Dick Schwartz, who was on the show. And from an addiction point of view, people should check out Anna Lemke, Dopamine Nation episode. It's a pretty good place to start there. Awesome. Okay, let's talk about narcissism. So hot right now. Oh my God. Nothing to do with the president, but so hot right now. What is narcissism? Why should we all have an understanding of narcissism?
So narcissism is that word, like you said, that is so wildly misused, it's kind of palpable. And I think a lot of people use narcissism to just describe somebody selfish. And it's like, yes. No. Narcissism is a personality disorder, right? This means that their character, who they are. And I actually had, because of my father, I went to a narcissist specialist for a few years and I learned a lot, right? It happens in the 0-1 symbiotic phase, right? There's a disconnect between the mother and the child. And that's where narcissism really comes into play. It is a very deep insecurity. And with narcissists, like we look at all narcissists are avoidant, right? But not all avoidants are narcissists. Narcissists are going to avoid because what do? They're grandiose. An example of that is when I told my father how much money I made. I was so excited. I was like, this is the most money I've ever made in a year. His response was, haha, I pay that in my taxes. And it's like, there's always this one up, right? It's the grandiosity of like, nothing you do is ever good enough. They come in really strong. They come in love bombing you because their goal, their intent is manipulation, is out of malice.
What is love bombing as opposed to just being nice to people? Like someone joked I was love bombing the other day. I'm pretty sure I was just loving them. So what's the difference?
To me, I like to say the pinch doesn't match the ouch, right? So the amount of love, attention, and admiration doesn't match the amount of time you've known this person. So a love bombing example could be, I go on a first date with somebody and already they're telling me they want me to meet their family. I'm the love of their life. They've never met anybody like me. They're taking me on these big trips. They're texting morning, noon, and night. Their goal is to get your boundaries down. They want to bring you down so they become the center of your universe. So that's the first step, is they come in really hot, really strong, so that you almost become upset. You become enamored with that. And then what they do is then they go into the second phase, which is the discredit, right? And so they go in, first they come in really strong. Oh my God, Mark, you're amazing. You're the man of my dream. All right? Coming in hot, heavy.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Keeping you, of course, keeping you so that you think, oh my God, this person's amazing. Then they go into the devalue stage. That's when the manipulation starts. So it might be you've shared something with me really, really traumatic as a child, and I'm sitting there saying, oh, wow, thank you for sharing. But then in a fight 2 weeks later, I say, well, no wonder your mother left you.
Okay,
And I start to
they
bring you
take
down.
you up so that you open the defenses, and then they can really crash you down because they know what gets to you. You're wide open, and you're kind of hooked on that at that point, right?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my
And
God,
that's
that's evil. Why do we not just call this evil and not a disease? Like, why is this not in the moral frame and in the medical frame?
It's a great question, truth be told, because I think a lot of the times we have to look at intent, and a lot of their intention is malice. It's out of manipulation. It's out of control. And well, here's the fun thing. So there's in psychology, somebody could correct me on the name, but there's like this triangle of personalities. So in the triangle, these are all high conflict personalities. So sociopathy, narcissism, and psychopathy. They're not all psychopaths are not always narcissists, right? But
Sure,
typically
dark
speaking, they
triad,
are
yeah.
narcissists. Thank you, the dark triad. That's the word. So what we want to look with narcissism, and that's why I hate when people misuse it, is because they are high conflict personalities. These are people like narcissistic rage is a very real thing.
Oh, yes.
I told my father in one conversation, it started with, I'm so proud of you. You look beautiful, right? Everything was lovely. And then he said, oh, we're going to a trip and you're coming with me. And I said, oh, no, I can't go. Instantly, within a second, what the fuck do you mean you can't go? Screaming at me, cursing at me, you fucking moron, fuck you. Going off, and then fine, you fuck you, you're not my kid. Hung up on me.
A huge rate. So this sort of, I've had this from a couple of guests. By the way, there's a couple of reasons I'm interested in this. One, I think it's just sort of like a self-defense because these predatory people. It's like when I learned about psychopaths some years back when I bumped into a couple, and I was like, "Whoa, I need to defend myself here," you know. And the other thing is, the bigger the podcast has got, the more guests I've had on that I've been suspicious were narcissistically tendencies, if not clinical. It seems like the sort of famous personal growth world crowd, particularly if they have big social media, are is really overrepresented in terms of narcissists. And they have a personal reason. Someone I care about very deeply had a narcissistic parent, so I'm exploring it for that reason. One of the questions I asked her, actually, I said, how do I know I'm not a narcissist? I've got a pretty big ego. And she said, well, one, you're asking that question. And she said,
Right.
and she said, and two, you can take accountability. So the other piece I've seen with narcissism, the grandiosity, the rage, is like we had a guest cancel sort of very last minute, just didn't show up, and I held them to account and said, hey, this is not really cool. You know, you should have emailed me. You know, and the response was the rage. But also it was total lack of accountability. It was no one else's fault. It was definitely not his fault. It was everyone else's fault. Sorry. So is that fair as a feature, this sort of total lack of accountability?
100%. That's why narcissists fucking hate boundaries. Because if you say, hey, I don't appreciate that, that doesn't work for me, it's instantly met with defensiveness, right? Because part of the narcissist is they see that as a person, they see any kind of rejection, right? Accountability as a knock against them. Well, how dare you? Who are you to tell? I didn't do anything wrong. So they don't, and that's why one of my favorite questions to ask on a date is, how did your last relationship end and what did it teach you about yourself?
Damn, first date? Oh, that's like a second date question, I would say. No, you're straight in there.
Wow. I'm straight in there. You want to know why?
Okay,
because I wish I had listened. I wish I had listened when my ex told me all my exes are crazy. They're all insane. I remember he's going on telling me stories. And at the time I was so unhealthy. I'm like, oh, I could be that girl. I'm not crazy. Now I look and go, what the fuck did you do to all 6 of them to make them all crazy?
Yeah, I have
no accountability.
Rule of thumb. If someone tells me one of their exes is a narcissist, I'm really sympathetic. If they say all their exes are narcissists, I'm pretty sure who the narcissist is, and it's not all the exes. So I guess it is possible someone could have a pattern of sort of drawing them in. How do we handle narcissists then? So if I kind of think, oh my God, you know, this guest is a narcissist and they want to come back on the show, or they want to do affiliates with us, they want to do business with us. There was one I can think of in that camp. And I kind of, my radar's up, my sort of lizard radar's up, and I've seen the lack of accountability. I've seen the rage. There's a sort of way they speak I've noticed on the podcast. What do I do? Because they're pretty scary people.
Yeah, I've had the same. I call them spiritual narcissist. It's a very like and you can see it. I've had a couple on my show, and I'm like, I'm not airing your episode. This was bullshit. And usually, what I do is I just say it's about me. Like I'll just take the ownership myself of like, hey,
My
I'm
bad.
super swamped. I'm booked up right now. Yeah, you know what? Why don't I get in touch with you? Anything about them is when you're going to spark that. It's because it's an insecurity. They're deeply, deeply insecure, and they want everyone to like them. So if you start to say anything about them, you could do that if you want to have the conversation. But if you and I are sitting here going, I don't want to deal with their bullshit, usually what I'll say is, cool, I'll be in touch. Thank you so much. We'd love that. We'll definitely contact you down the road. But right now we're booked up. I appreciate your interest.
Yeah,
That way, because they don't want to feel rejected.
that's the key thing, right? Because they're pretty thin-skinned. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah.
You saw sort of Trump and Zelensky have a row recently, and wherever your politics is, it was clear that Trump's pretty thin-skinned in his response to something. I actually like him in some ways. I think he's got some good policies. So if any Republican listeners are out there, I'm not like hating on Trump, but he's thin-skinned, and that doesn't seem a great quality in a global leader. Do you think it's fair that we name narcissism in public figures? I mean, I'm not Trump's psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I haven't tested him. But there's so many features I can't ignore the obvious grandiosity, the lack of accountability. Is it fair that we name it in public figures?
I mean, I think it's normal and it's very human too, but I also think with that comes what's the connotation with it, right? Like we have seen, I was watching a study and it said most really good business owners are narcissists. Like we're talking the megalomaniac,
Sure.
Fortune 500 type companies, not just like a small business owner, because you have to be that ruthless to get to that level, right? When you play nice in the sandbox consistently and you're always morals, ethos, and ethics. And I'm not condoning it, but I am saying they did do a study where they saw most of them are narcissistic for a reason. Now, we can have it where I think you and I are on the same page. I don't know what's going to happen in this country. I have no fucking clue. But for me, as somebody who lives here, I look at it as, sure, maybe that's his personality. But what I care about is take care of our fucking country, take care of our home, and make sure we're safe. Whatever you're going through. Now, if that becomes an issue, okay, well, then we need to acknowledge not just, oh, well, they're a narcissist. Sure, but what is that narcissism doing to impact them as being a leader? How is that, right? If they're a narcissist and you're going, yeah, but look, they just made all these deals and it's working.
Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe
so they might
ego could be helpful. I mean, I know Putin,
Exactly.
for example, has more respect for
Right.
Trump than Biden because he's just unpredictable. Like there's an unpredictability, which means that Putin's a bit more cautious. So in that sense, it might be a positive. By the way, you can't say fucking on this show, but you can say motherfucking. Okay, just for the record, you can take
Appreciate
it up.
that.
Yeah, you take it up a notch. Take it up. It's all good. Okay, wow. So lots here. Whew. Attachment, narcissism, love bombing. Let's talk trauma. What's the big thing? Everyone's so hot right now. What's your hot take on trauma?
My hot take on trauma is this. It's very real, right? There's the big T's, which are like, I don't need to say them. We know how that could impact abuse, sexual assault, things like that, right? Those are the big T's. But then there are also little T's, like we call it, like they're little paper cuts. And I think what's happened is it's the same thing as everyone else. People are using trauma as an excuse. Well, I had trauma. And it's like, bitch, didn't everybody?
Yeah,
right? Like we've all experienced it. But it's a matter of what accountability are you taking with it? Like for me, I had a really abusive father, right? Like I'm not going to try to pretend. For years I normalized it. I was like, oh, you weren't hit as a kid? Your father didn't cheat on your mother the whole time? Your father didn't call you names? Like that was just us? So when I finally called it to the table, it wasn't that I was using it to get sympathy or, oh, well, here, I'm going to act like an asshole, but it's because I had trauma. What I was doing it was to explain to myself and to validate my experience to say, oh, that was traumatic. Okay, that wouldn't surprise me then that this would be really difficult for me as an adult. And I think it's kind of similar to anything else that we've taken something that at its core is beautiful to work through. And I think, your trauma was never, you didn't ask for it, but it is your responsibility to work through it now as an adult, right? Or otherwise, you're like these adults who are just going around projecting onto people, getting volatile and saying, well, but that's the household I grew up in. Again, I'm sorry to hear about that. My heart goes out to you. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, it's not an excuse for fragility. It's not an excuse for a way to control others. And it's certainly a bit overstated. I'm working in Ukraine or with Ukrainians fairly frequently. So sometimes the contrast, the juxtaposition of my Californian clients and my Ukrainian clients in the same day is sometimes a little silly.
Yeah.
You talk about the work a lot, and there's this idea, oh, we got to do the work. People just used to fall in love and hook up and get married and have a nice time, and now we have to do the work. I mean, I'm kind of busy, Sabrina. I'm kind of tired. Like how much work do I have to do here?
I mean, for me, the work is personal, right? It's not about anybody else. For me, the work is so, what I like to say is doing this work on yourself doesn't mean it goes away. It just means that you learn to live with it. And we're expanding our window of tolerance. And when we look at our window of tolerance, essentially what that means is that's a space where when you go above your window of tolerance and you go into dysregulation, high, right? Mobilized energy, fight, flight. When you come back into your window of tolerance, that's typically where we can experience joy, laughter, security, safety. And then when you go below, right, we see those peaks and valleys. That's when we're constantly vacillating between the different nervous system states. And for me, doing the work, for years I wasn't implementing what it was that I was learning. And that's what I mean by actually doing it. Because I could sit here, it's the same as I compare it to going to the gym. I could read every book on doing a deadlift and how do you properly do a squat. But until I'm in the gym and I do it a ton over and over and over again, then I'm not going to see the results. So I could intellectualize it all day and say, well, I've listened to every podcast, I've downloaded every free guide, but I don't feel any better. It's like, because you're not doing anything about it. What are you doing about when you're dysregulated? Are you choosing a different response?
Yes.
Are you learning to self-soothe? Are we talking in different verbiage? Are we communicating in different ways? How am I talking to myself?
And
that to me is doing the work.
So that's skill acquisition, not just what John Vervaeke would call propositional learning. You're not just learning about something, you're actually learning a skill set you can apply. There's a really key difference, I think, in that. Yeah. Nice.
Exactly.
Nice. We've got like 10, 15 minutes here. What's a topic you never get asked about that you think, God, these interviewers, they always ask me these same boring questions about attachment theory and trauma. Like what's not boring to you? What's like the fresh thing? This is the thing that people should really ask me about.
It's funny. I think a lot of people ask me surface level questions about topics that I like to go into deeper. And that's inclusive of, like, I think a lot of the clickbait that we see. Like, people ask me quickly of like, oh, why should we not focus on text? And it's like, yeah, okay, on paper, I could tell you that texting doesn't equal somebody that's interested in you. But then when we really
questions
go down,
to ask on a first date. We'll do that next, Sabrina, just to torture you.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Go for it.
I already gave one.
You did one.
But I think what a lot of people, like when we talk about texting and the black and white thinking, what I really like to go into deeper is like, how can we create shades of gray? What does nuance look like in a relationship? How can we understand what does compassion actually look like? What is the compassion within ourselves? And if we cultivate that internally, how can we have that for other people? How can that change our relationships? And I think we're so focused on, and not to blame anybody, I think that's just a cultural thing, that if I see one more fucking video of like, if a guy doesn't text you every day, that means he doesn't like you. And what I see there is such a psychology mindfuck, truthfully. And it's not really it's not taking into account human behavior. It's not taking into account lived experiences. And it's more so just a black and white thought process of this is good, this is bad.
And very manipulative.
And
it's like how to get him to text back, right? It's like pickup artistry for girls. It's objectifying culture of getting a result, irrespective of the human being involved.
Exactly. And it's incredibly manipulative. And it's the same thing as the sayings. You've seen them as much as I have. If he wanted to, he would. And it's like, that's very arrogant. It's very entitled to think that because I'm in someone's life, they suddenly have to change everything about the way they do things because I entered it. Right?
Like, I just busy. Yeah. I was in a bomb shelter once and someone got upset that I didn't text them. I was like, I was literally in a bomb shelter. There was no Wi-Fi. But that was the sort of time when I thought this person's a little bit anxious. So shades of gray, shades of fabulous pink, like your microphone there. Shades of fabulous pink, I think, as well. Good.
Yes.
So top 3 first date questions. Let's do it. Let's go shallow. So let's imagine my sweetheart gets hit by a moose in Canada and sadly deceased. Okay, the funeral is very sad, but then I have to start dating again. God forbid. I'm so glad I'm not dating again now. So glad. But what would be my top 3 questions to ask a lady on a date to make sure she's healthy? It's like just please, just not mad and kind of kind and a bit smart. That'll do. Okay, so what do I ask?
Well, I mean, already you know me. I love my how did your relationship end? What did it teach you about
Yeah.
yourself? Another thing I really like to ask is like, how do you normally handle conflict? Right? Is that something? Do you like to talk about it, or are you somebody that usually needs space? It doesn't have to be this. We don't have to go into childhood traumas. Questions that I really love to ask. I'm trying to like. I'm with you. It's been a minute since I've dated. I'm so grateful I have my partner and love him. But a question I actually really love to ask is like, what does a serious relationship look like and mean to you? Because for a lot of people, when you ask questions like that, they're like, huh? What do you mean? What is that? It's
So
like,
one more
no.
time. One
Does
more
that,
time. What does a
yeah.
relationship mean to you?
What is it? What is a serious, like, what is a romantic, serious, however you want to say it? What does a
Yeah.
serious relationship look like to you? And what is it that you're actually seeking? Like, how do you want to feel when you're with your partner? What do you want a partner for? Right? Like, I have always just been like, or a question I've asked, and it's a hot take. When I ask somebody, and I'm not saying to say it like this, I'm saying like this is the question. When I ask somebody, why are you single? I'm not literally saying like, what's wrong with you? No, no, no. What I'm saying is, why are we where we're at now? What brought me and you sitting across from each other on this date
Right.
that
Right. Right.
you are not with anybody and that I'm not with
But
anybody?
that's a fair
Right? Because
question for anyone over 30. Why have you been left on
yeah,
the
thank you.
shelf? Something like that. That's fair. It's fair.
Uh,
Yeah. So
I want it for me, like,
go
I
on.
want to know how you handle things. I want to know if you take accountability. I want to know if you're going to respect my boundaries. I want to know if I say, it's like, let's say you ask me something and I say, I'm not comfortable answering that right now. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, fair, fair. Okay, so they're all my warriors' relationships are becoming so therapeutic. None of these are like, how do they smell? And do they make my toes curl? I mean, I'm not such a romantic. I think the sort of monogamous romantic sort of love myth is, it's got a lot going for it. The one. I think there's a lot of nonsense in that, But I guess that you alluded to something like shared purpose, like what's the center of this relationship, or even
Yeah,
just very practical things, right? Like after 30, it's like, do you want kids, right? The super, like, do we actually want the same things here practically?
I can't tell you. I just had a client the other day and I love her. And she said, she was berating herself. I'm so dumb. I'm so dumb. And I was like, okay, cut the shit. What happened? And she said, well, we were dating for 6 weeks. He called me every single day. We were sleeping together, blah, blah, blah. But now he tells me he doesn't want a relationship. And I was like, did you talk about that on the first date? She said, well, why would we? Why would I bring it up? I
Right.
don't want to be too much. And I said, but that's my point. You're taking that they
Yeah,
text you
yeah,
every
yeah.
day and that they're hooking up with you, that they want what you do. And to your point, I asked my partner, do you want kids? Because I don't think that I do. If you do and you're almost 40, you have every right to demand that, but then I wouldn't be the partner that you should date.
Right, right. You
How
want
do you want
different
to
things.
live your life? Like, yeah, do you want like what do you see as an outline? Like, how do you handle money? Right? Are you somebody that has half a
Big
million
one.
dollars in debt,
Money's a
or
big
are
one.
you somebody that,
Yeah.
right? How do you treat a waiter? How do you treat staff when you're out? How do they speak to other people? How do they respect you? Because I think for a long time, I think a lot of people focus on the spark, right? I need
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
feel the highs. I need the intensity. And it's like, here's a fun fact. The spark is actually your body sending blood to your phalanges or your external so that you could go and run. But what happens is that person's really sexy. And so when they're attractive, you're like, this feels great. If they were a troll, if they were a person with a knife,
Mm-hmm,
if they
mm-hmm.
were someone that was going to hurt you, you would be running the other way. And when we're chasing a feeling, you can't be surprised that when that feeling fades, when you're two human
Feelings
beings that
go.
eventually show up, you're going to then be left with, oh, how does my nervous system feel with them? Do I feel seen, heard, and understood? Do I feel safe emotionally to express myself, or do I feel like I'm walking on eggshells? That is what I want people to look at, not how do I feel about them, right? What's their job? Do they look good, or what would my friends think if I dated them? It's like, what about me? What matters is not just are they choosing me, but am I also choosing me, and do I choose them?
Nice, nice. Okay, let's finish off with some evil then. So let's imagine
Okay.
you're Sabrina's kind of evil twin sister, and you want to like mess up the dating life of people. Sabrina's evil twin sister sort of takes over the podcast one day. She comes in. I really hope you haven't got an actual twin, by the way. And she comes in
No.
and she takes over the studio. She convinces your studio manager that she's the real you, and she wants to give out the worst bits of dating advice just to mess up the dating life of the world. What is evil twin Sabrina's sister going to tell everyone? Top 3 bits of evil advice.
Oh, top three. If they don't text you every day, they don't like you. Focus on that. If everybody has their phone in their hand 24/7, that person's just not into you. The second thing would be avoidance of the worst person. Anxious is the safest one. They're terrible. They're mean. They're bad. Right. And I think the third one would be How do I get them to, here's how to get a guy to like you. Here's how to get someone to be into you. Here's how to make them want you. Here's how to make them chase you. It's all ways of self-abandonment. It's all packaged in a bow of making you. I remember, Mark, when I was single in my heyday, I used to listen to one creator. I'm not going to name anybody because I respect a lot of these people. And it was text this to get this. And I remember I did it and I was like, I got a dick pic, but I did not get anything more than that back from this person.
Disappointing.
Because it is, right? Especially because I was like, didn't ask for it. But it's manipulative because what we're doing is we're setting people up to play a chess game instead of be authentic in themselves. And then we wonder why when you bait and switch somebody and then you're in a relationship and going, but why did they change? It's like, because that was never them.
Nice. Okay, last question before we tell people where to find your stuff. A little ChatGPT birdie told me that you used to do musical theater. So what would the musical theater of your life be called? It's just a stupid question to close us.
Oh no, I'll take it. Probably the first thing that comes to mind always is like work in progress. Cause like my work is never done. I want to always become every day I look at it as what else can I learn about myself? How can these triggers teach me more about me? How can I come even more home to myself? And how can I actually live a life that I've always dreamed of and be ready to receive it? So I think if that were it, you'd always be like, wow, somebody else, she lost something else. Somebody else passed away. This didn't happen. And it's like, but I'm constantly trying to take the buildings that burn and instead of holding on to the ashes, trying to rebuild, I'm trying to be like a phoenix rising and make my own new creation, new reality, new future so that I can actually show up authentically and live the life that I do fucking deserve.
I think you've done well on the fuck count. This one, definitely top three. That's always a win. I wasn't sure if I'd like you. I wasn't sure if you'd be a sort of vacuous LA dating coach or something, but I've actually enjoyed this. This has been super fun, super, I think, practical for people. Lots of good swearing. Where do people go to find you on the internet?
Thanks, Mark. And I'm a New Yorker. That's why. So SabrinaZohar.com, at the Sabrina Zohar Show, or just my Sabrina Zohar on YouTube if you want to watch this girl talk a little fast. But yeah, we're here creating a community of people that really want to find a place that feels comfortable and safe.
Thank you, Sabrina, for joining us.
Thanks, Mark.